Hello my fellow working class heroes, good day. I am Carlo and welcome to Carlo Excels. These are the objectives of this episode. Today we're gonna talk about the advanced applications of the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. In particular, we're gonna talk about the manipulation of the column index number or row index number parts of the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. My dear viewers, this is actually the third video in our series regarding the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. During the first video, we already talked about the basics of the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. And of course, on the second video, we talked about intermediate applications of the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. If you haven't seen those videos yet, please proceed to the descriptions part of this video. We have their links to the basics and the intermediate lesson on the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP function. I also want to note, my dear viewers, that for this particular lesson, we are primarily going to use the VLOOKUP function. But just like what we mentioned in a previous video, the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions, they work almost exactly the same. So therefore, anything we do with the VLOOKUP function can also be done with the HLOOKUP function. So now we're here at Microsoft Excel, just like what we usually do in this channel. We have here our fictional names of students. There are 200 of them over here. And then we have here their fictional grade 7 grades from Filipino all the way to values. Now say for example, what we want to do is, we want to pick a student here via drop-down box. And then after picking a student here, we want, let's say, the English grade of the student to be displayed here on the blank which says grade. So let's set that up first. So let's set up data validation so we get a drop-down list here. If you do not know how to do this yet, links on the description below on our lesson on data validation. So data validation, and then we want to create a list. The source of the list will be the names of the students over here. And then, okay. Now we have a drop-down box for students here. So let's set up our VLOOKUP function for the English grade. So we done this during our basics lesson. So let's speed things up. VLOOKUP. Lookup value, we want to look up the name of the student. Table array is going to be this here. And then of course, column index number is going to be 3 because the English grade is on the third column, so column index number 3, and then we want an exact match in this case, so we have here false. Press enter, and you have here the English grade of Abby. So we select another student, Alger for example, and the grade changes accordingly. Now enough with the review, let's proceed to something new. Now if you look at the formula for the VLOOKUP function, once again this part is the lookup value, this part is the table array, and this part is the column index number. Now just like what I mentioned during the basics lesson, the column index number is a number. It's a number value. Now if you pay attention to our lessons on Carlo Excels, you would know that number values can actually be manipulated. So therefore, this number value here can actually be a cell reference, and it can actually be used for calculation. In other words, Microsoft Excel will not just look at the column index number as it is shown here. It will look at the results of any calculation for any calculation that you do here for this number you place in here. Now, why is the knowledge of this important? Well, if you know this, then you can perform actually some pretty handy tricks with the column index number part of the VLOOKUP function. So say for example, let's look at that. And then let's zoom in so that's easier to see what I'm gonna do with the formula. So if you have here the column index number of 3 and you want to change this to column index number 6, for example, 3 times 2, you can do it that way, 3 times 2. So what Microsoft Excel is going to do is, it's actually going to take the result of this particular calculation here, 3 times 2, and it will return 6, column 6. So for example, it is now 3 times 2, so therefore Microsoft Excel is actually looking at column 6 right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is now actually the social studies grade of Alger. And yes, the social studies grade of Alger is 92. And just like what I mentioned a while ago, this can actually also be a cell reference. In other words, this doesn't have to be an exact column index number. You can actually replace that with a cell reference and then point it somewhere else. For example, I am pointing it to this blank here, which I labeled as index, and then I press enter. So right now, it still says it's still a value, an error, because there's nothing yet in the index index space here. But if I change this index space here to something else, for example, I put 2 here, then Microsoft Excel is using this 2 as the column index number for this VLOOKUP function. So this is now the Filipino grade. On the third column is the English grade. So if you want the English grade, change this to 3. Or change this to 4 for the math grade. Or change this to 9 for the values grade. So in other words, you can manipulate the VLOOKUP function. You can manipulate the results, rather, of the VLOOKUP function by manipulating the column index number, and you can use cell references to point the column index number somewhere else. By knowing this, you can actually do a VLOOKUP function for multiple conditions. So say for example, this is what we're gonna do. We're going to pick a student here via a drop-down box, and then we're going to pick a subject here via a drop-down box. So we pick a student, and then we pick a subject, and then we get the grade of that student for the particular subject that we picked. Now let's first set up the student drop-down box. So once again, use data validation. Let's create a list, and the source of the list is this list of students over here. Okay, so we now have a list of students here, and then let's create a list of subjects. You will notice, of course, that I already created a list of subjects here to the left. So let's create another drop-down box there, list. Source of the list is going to be these subjects here. Press enter. Okay, so we now have a list of subjects here and a list of students here. Now let's look at the way we arranged our data here. So we have here the Filipino grades are on the second column, English on the third, math on the fourth, science on the fifth, social studies on the sixth, TLE on the seventh, MAPE on the eighth, and then of course values on the ninth. So let's input here the column numbers for these particular subjects. Again, Filipino on column 2, English on column 3, math on column 4, science on column 5, social studies column 6, TLE column 7, MAPE column 8, and values column 9 there. Now, why am I creating this chart here? Well, I'm creating this chart here because I want to use a VLOOKUP here, and then we want to create an index based on the subject here. In other words, we want to pick a subject, and we want Microsoft Excel to give us back a particular index number based on the subject that we selected here. Now, let's do that. So, on this blank here, which says index, so equals, let's do a VLOOKUP. Now, lookup value is whatever subject we enter here later. So, this is the lookup value. This is going to be the table array over here. This is the table that we want Microsoft Excel to pay attention to for this particular case. Table array there, and then column index number. The index numbers are on the second column. So we put in here column index number of 2, and then we want an exact match. Press enter. Oops, error. Oh, I forgot a comma. And then we press enter. Now let's see if this formula works. So let's select a subject. If I pick Filipino over here, you will see that this space here has now changed to 2. Let me zoom that in. This now has changed to 2. If we pick English, this has now changed to 3. Math, this has now changed to 4. TLE is now changed to 7, etc., etc., etc. Now that we've set this up, we can now set up the grade VLOOKUP. So let me highlight that so it's easier to see. So what we're gonna do is, based on the subject that we picked here, the index number is going to change. And this index number is what we're going to use as the column index number for the VLOOKUP for grades. So this is what we do. We set up a VLOOKUP function here. So VLOOKUP the name of the student, this one over here, this is the name of the student, and then the table array is going to be this table right here. And then in this case, the column index number, instead of manually entering column index number, the column index number is this, the one we prepared a while ago. This is the column index number, and then of course we want an exact match. We press enter, and that is the grade of the student. Now let's see if this works. So let's pick a student here. For example, let's pick Agua, and then let's pick his English grade. So Agua's English grade is 81, and you will see here it's also 81 right here. So what we do, because of the way we set this up, we can pick a student here, and then we can pick a subject here, and then this VLOOKUP function, because it is also basing it from this other VLOOKUP function, will now display the data based on these two conditions. So that is how you use multiple VLOOKUP functions to set up multiple conditions. But we can actually take this to the logical extreme. In other words, what about we set up the VLOOKUP function with 3 conditions? Now on this particular screen that we see here, we now have, of course, our fictional 200 students. Then we have here the grades of the students. But in this case, we do not have just the grade 7 grades. We also have their grade 8 grades, their grade 9 grades, and then of course their grade 10 grades. Now in this example, this is what we're gonna do. We're going to have 3 conditions for this. So we're going to pick a student, and then we're going to pick a particular subject, and then we're going to pick a particular grade level. For example, we will have the student Antonio, the Filipino grade for grade 10. So based on those 3 conditions, we're going to display the grade that we're looking for here. And we're going to use multiple VLOOKUPs for this. Now before we start this, we first have to look at our data the way it is arranged, and we find the patterns for this. So you will see, of course, the way I arranged the data that you see here on the screen. Filipino always goes first, followed by English, Math, Science, Social Studies, TLE, MAPE, and Values. So all of the other grade levels follow the exact same pattern over here. So whatever grade level there is, the pattern is always Filipino, English, Math, Science, Social Studies, TLE, MAPE, and Values. So you have a consistent pattern there. At the same time, there is another pattern here. There are always 8 subjects per grade level over here. So you have 8 subjects per grade level, and all of the subjects follow a particular pattern. It's always useful to arrange your subjects in patterns like this because it's much easier for you to create VLOOKUP logics based on these patterns. Let's start with this. Let us set up our list boxes here. So once again, using data validation, let's set up a drop-down list here using the names of the students as our source, like so. And then so yeah, we now have the list of the names of the students here via a drop-down box. Let's now create our list of subjects here. Once again, using data validation, creating a list, and this is our list of students here. So this is our list of subjects, rather, not students. Now let's create our list of grade levels over here. So data validation, creating a list, and this is our list of grade levels over here. So let's pick a student, a subject, and a grade level like so. Next, let's start with the coordinates first for the grade levels, which you see here below. Now, once again, try to find the pattern that exists on your data based on the way you arranged it. Now, you will notice, of course, that, if you look at the way we arrange the data here, grade 7 starts on the 2nd column. Grade 8 starts on the 10th column. Here, this is the 10th column, and then grade 9 starts on the 18th column. So I think you're noticing the pattern right now. So grade 7 starts on the 2nd column, grade 8 starts on the 10th column, grade 9 starts on the 18th column. You have a pattern of 8. Once again, because we have 8 subjects, so you have 8 column patterns. So we can create our indices over here. So grade 7 starts on the 2nd column. Grade 8 starts on the 10th column, grade 9 starts on the 18th column, and grade 10 starts on the 26th column. Now, why is this important? Because we want to set up our column index number using this data here. So on this particular space here, on the level part, let's create our chosen column index as far as grade level is concerned. So let's create a VLOOKUP function over here. So VLOOKUP, you want to VLOOKUP this here, this data here. Well, we want to VLOOKUP our grade level, and then table array is going to be this, the grade levels, column index number is 2, and then we want an exact match over here. So the way we set this up, let me highlight this so it's easier to see. The way we set this up is every time we change our grade level over here, this index, final index for our grade level changes as well. So grade 7, this becomes a value of 2. Grade 8, this becomes a value of 10. Grade 9, this becomes a value of 18. And grade 10, this becomes a value of 26. Now, let's set up our index for the subjects part. And once again, let's try to find the pattern. So, after, once again, we've determined that grade 7 starts on the second column. So, once it starts on the second column, so Filipino is on the second column, English is on the third, Math is on the fourth, Science is on the fifth, Social Studies 6th, TLE 7th, MAPE 8th, and of course, Values is 9th. So what's happening is, after you proceed to grade 7 on the second column, you add 0 to the second column, and that's your Filipino grade. Add 1 and you get your English grade. Add 2 and you get your math grade. 3 for science, 4 for social studies, 5 for MAPE, 5 for TLE rather, 6 for MAPE, and 7 for values. So that is how we should arrange the indices for our subjects. So once again, second column, grade 7 starts on the second column, but add 0 to that, and then you get our Filipino grade. So let's put here 0, and then add 1 for English, 2 for math, 3 for science, 4 for social studies, 5 for TLE, 6 for MAPE, and then 7 for values. Now, if you're still getting lost, don't worry, it will make sense once we finish the whole thing. So let's continue for now. Now, what we want to do next is, in this particular space here, so let's color that in this particular space here, we want to pick the index number. We want to create an index number here based on the subject that is picked by the user here. So let's do a VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP this particular subject here. VLOOKUP this value from this table array using the second column as your results. And then we want an exact match in this case. Press enter. So in this case now, if you pick Filipino, this becomes 0. In this, if you pick English, this becomes 1. If you pick science, this becomes 3. If you pick MAPE, this becomes 6, etc., etc., etc. And for our more astute viewers, I think you already know where we're going with this. So we want to create a final index value. So let's color that in as well. We want to create a final index value. This final index value is the result of the sum of the values for English and the index value for the grade level. So what we do here for this space is you want to create a formula that adds this and this. So in other words, if we create if we pick a subject and then we pick a grade level, this particular index number based on the index number for the subjects and the index number for the grade level, you have here the final locator of the column. What I mean by this is, take for example, we pick here science grade, and then for grade 9, we have here an index number of 21. Why is that 21? Because science grade 9 is on the 21st column. Oops, that's science grade 8. It's on the 21st column over in this particular table. And that is what we've determined in this particular cell, which comes from the addition of the index for subject and the index for grade level. And using this final locator for the subject, we can now create our VLOOKUP for the grade of Abby. So setting up our main final VLOOKUP. So on this particular space here, VLOOKUP, we want to look up this name of the student. And of course, this whole thing here is our table. And then we want to look up the column index number of our result a while ago. So this is our column index number. And of course, in this case, we want an exact match like so. So in this case, you now have 75 as the science grade 9 grade of Abby. And to verify, this is Abby. Yes, in fact, 75 rather is in fact the grade 9 science grade of Abby. So you can do further testing if you want to. For example, if you have the student Arce, you want the social studies grade for grade 10. Yes, this student's social studies grade is 75. If you want, for example, Dallas, 81 is the social studies grade for grade 10 of this particular student. So that is how you use multiple conditions for the VLOOKUP function by simply knowing how to manipulate the column index number part of the VLOOKUP function or the row index number part of the HLOOKUP function if you prefer the HLOOKUP function. But whatever the case, I hope that you've seen now how versatile actually the VLOOKUP function can be. And please note that this is not the only way that you can use the VLOOKUP function. This is not the only way that you can manipulate the column index number part of the VLOOKUP function. In fact, there are many other ways you can do this. You can even use the if function for this. You can use the COUNTIF function for this. There are countless ways to manipulate the VLOOKUP function to get the exact data that you need through location. Whatever the case, I hope that this particular lesson has given you some ideas or some basics regarding how this process is done. So that's it for our lesson on the use of the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP function, and in particular, the manipulation of the column index number. I hope I earned your subscription today. Once again, I am Carlo, and this is Carlo Excels. Thank you very much for watching.